Joining us now, she was, of course, a standout two-way player, both at Washington and at LSU. Has been to the World Series. Has been multiple times All-Region performer. This past year was an All-SEC performer. Also played professionally this past summer, which we'll ask her about. She's done a little bit of everything. I speak of Kelley Lynch, joining us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So, been following your podcast and all the things for a while now. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We've been a follow you for a long time too. Just how do you feel right now? It's a weird question to ask, but you've been playing softball nonstop. It seems like this is like the first time period I would have said that you haven't had to play softball. You just finished playing in the WPF. How you feeling?
yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like you said, it's literally been my life for the past 20 years. But it's crazy. It just tends to keep popping up here and there. I just had lunch earlier today with a younger athlete at my former high school who's currently going through recruiting process. So, just trying to help her. So, it seems like even when I'm not playing, I still am always involved in the sport. But yeah, it's pretty surreal. I just can't be more blessed for the career that I've been able to have and the opportunities I've been able to have. But yeah, definitely surreal.
You got to play in the WPF this summer. I got to see you play a little bit. Ran into that Texas franchise there at the end. But how would you describe your pro summer season?
Yeah, I had a blast. It was a lot more of a chill environment, I guess I would say, compared to college softball. But you have 4 games a day and you're a pro, so kind of everything's up to you. You don't have people, writing your workouts and all those sorts of things. So a lot more accountability on my end, which I really enjoyed. And I had got the opportunity to play with some SEC and Pac-12 girls that I'd gone through college playing against and knew their names and faces, but actually getting to know them, playing beside them on the field was super special as well. I also had a childhood friend, Charlotte Eccles, who we started playing together when we were, just shy of 4 years old. So getting to compete against her and former teammate Silent Rain Espinoza is just a cool full circle moment. But yeah, it was a blast out there. It was hot, but it was a good time. So I really enjoyed it.
What is your kind of is pro playing something you're doing? You're planning on doing? Is it a year by year? How do you approach that moving forward?
Yeah, so my contract was just the 1 year contract. So I finished that up with the team this summer. And then just kind of on my end, just you kind of have to sit and wait to see if there's going to be an opportunity to do it again. So I certainly would be blessed to be able to, continue to play for another season. But also from a financial aspect, I have to start considering a job career and how I'm going to take care of myself from that point of view. So there's definitely a lot of factors that contribute to it. But like I said, I had a blast this summer. I love this game so much. So we'll see what opportunities are still ahead for me. But
Yeah, that's what kind of wait and see, and kind of it sounds like you want to kind of keep all your options open.
absolutely, yes.
Have you had a chance to reflect on your college career this summer at all, or have you been just focused so much on the pro playing and kind of your future beyond that?
Yeah, I feel like I just recently kind of got to take a deep breath. When I transitioned to pro ball, I was still finishing up my graduate degree from LSU through online school. So, in a sense, I still felt like a student athlete. I still had my work I had to do every day and then hitting the field when I got done with school. So, I feel like I just in the last couple weeks, I've kind of been able to take a deep breath and digest it all. But man, I just feel so blessed. I got the opportunity to play for 2 incredible softball programs, both at the University of Washington and then finishing up at LSU. And just the friends that I've made and the bonds and mentors that I've been able to meet and continue to have relationships with. I was just on the phone with, Bailey Klingler right before I got on the Zoom. But yeah, just like the community that college softball gave me, and of course all of the incredible experiences and games, and that's what I dreamed of as a kid, just the opportunity to be able to live that out. I mean, those are memories I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. So I couldn't be more grateful to both of the programs, UW and LSU, for the opportunity they gave me and the community that I'll have for the rest of my life. So
And I mean, that's two good places to have your academics. I believe you got degrees from both places. Uh, what is that like? What was that experience like to get a degree at Washington? Then you moved on to LSU and you get your grad degree. Got to recently get to celebrate that. What is that like, and how are you able to adapt from an academic standpoint to two different schools?
Yeah, I think it kind of worked out good for me when I decided to transfer. I had already earned my undergrad degree from Washington. So when I transferred to LSU, I went straight into my master's with them. And I think it's especially after finishing, my first season with pro ball. And I think softball is gaining a lot of momentum. And, the systems are trying to work themselves out and trying to get better year after year. But at the end of the day, as softball players, we need those college degrees because unfortunately, right now, we can't rely on our sport to, keep us financially stable for the rest of our lives. So I couldn't be more blessed not only to be able to play for, a top 20 softball team, but also to earn a degree from both of those universities because I know I'm going to need it down the road. So.
That's right. Always planning for the future on that. You mentioned obviously that it's recruiting time right now. It's a heat, and all that stuff. What advice are you giving the young people when you talk to them? Like you mentioned earlier, what's the big advice? Because you went through this, in a lot of ways, very public. Because you were a highly touted recruit, so you had to deal with a lot of stuff that maybe some of these players now are doing as well because recruiting's become bigger and bigger as years go on. What advice do you give?
Yeah, I was making jokes earlier with a friend of mine. I got to do it 3 times. So I did it, when I was in 8th grade before those rules changed, and then again my senior year of high school, and then obviously when I transferred. So it's really interesting. I definitely think the kids these days kind of have a lot more to consider. Obviously, with NIL on the table, that's a big topic in collegiate sports right now. But yeah, and also that rule change. When September first hits, it's going at a lot faster pace than it was back when I was getting recruited. So these kids are having to make decisions fast and in a very short period of time. So I'm just trying to be an ear to listen and give the best advice I can. Like what questions are you wanting to ask? It's really down to the individual, right? Like how much do you care about your academics versus your athletics? There's a lot of questions and a lot of things to consider when you're picking, your home for the next 4 years. So I think for me personally, I'm just really trying to be an open ear and give the best advice possible I can to these kids because it's a massive decision and I know it can be extremely stressful. But yeah, just kind of sharing my experience, sharing connections that I have at different schools that these kids are going to visit, former players, kind of allowing them to connect and talk about their experience. And I think that's such a cool thing about softball is, it's a big community, but it's also so small at the same time. It seems like everybody knows everybody, and I think that makes it super unique. So.
What's the key in making sure you have a successful process, whether it be when you're being recruited coming out of high school, whether it be when you're in the transfer portal? What's the key, having, as you've gone through it, as you mentioned, what is the key in having that successful process where you make the right decision, you land where you want to land?
Yeah, I think that's where, the anxiety comes from. It is, how do I know if I'm making the right decision? How can I have no regrets at the end of it? And I think for me, just being your most authentic self and being true to yourself and, telling these coaches what you really want, what you're really looking for. It might be a family atmosphere. Like I said, you might be really focused on academics. So being honest about that and really sitting down and deciding prior to when you're talking to these coaches, what am I looking for? What am I trying to get out of the next 4 years? And then obviously now you have NIL on the table, which throws a whole nother curveball in there when you get in there and you start talking about, money and these deals and, what kind of opportunities can be awaited for you from that lens. But yeah, I think the best advice I could give is just be as authentic as you possibly can be, because ultimately these are going to be the people you're around pretty much 24/7 for the next 4 years. So you want to be as authentic as possible to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you. So.
Did you wish NIL was a part of the equation when you got into college? Are you glad it wasn't because that was one extra thing to consider? I mean, how did you cope with that? I seen it on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, NIL was a thing when I decided to transfer, and obviously you can't really have those conversations while you're getting recruited. But looking at schools, you can kind of get a good idea of where the big money's at, I guess you could say. I think from a selfish perspective, coming out of my senior year of high school, obviously the Sports Illustrated cover. I think if NIL was a thing, I might have a little bit more in the bank account than I do now, but on the other end, it is kind of changing the college athletics landscape. And I know there's a lot of point of views on it, and a lot of people thinking it's a really good thing, some people thinking it's a really bad thing. I see both perspectives. I think as a college athlete, you definitely don't have time to get a job. And if you're someone that needs financial help, NIL has been an incredible, incredible asset for a lot of these athletes to be able to, not only take care of themselves, but in some instances, they're helping out their family members. So, I think it's a good thing, but I definitely think, they have some regulations to put in place and need a better system to manage it. But yeah, I'm glad I got to experience it. But yeah, I go back and forth on kind of how I feel about it. So
It's tough, right? Like I always tell people it's kind of you kind of mixed emotion things. There's some good and there's some things that are like, oh, I don't know if that's great or not. I mean, is there anything specific that you've went through that you now think maybe should be addressed that you think could be better for the student athletes?
I've actually was thinking about this week, and I think something that could be really cool coming out of NILs. We're seeing, you know, college athletes making more money than a lot of these professional athletes are, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that can help adapt the professional aspect of softball with some of these players making so much money. How can we kind of reinvest and keep the future of softball growing so that the money doesn't start coming in, when you graduate college, you can have a real chance of making a career financially for yourself. So I think that could be, I don't know how that would be done, but just kind of some ideas I've thought about is how, can we kind of reinvest, some of this money into the future of softball from some of these big time players. So I think that would be really cool. I think in my experience, I got the opportunity to work with some cool brands. And for me, I was able to make a lot of potentially professional relationships that, some of these brands I can still reach out to, if I want a job in the future, even. So it's definitely providing a cool platform. We just need to kind of figure out how do we want to regulate that kind of on a national level. So you don't have one school that's just able to bring in whoever they want to. So.
It's almost like you're out there trying to get a job and you're trying to network to get a job somewhere. It sounds like the same process where a key of this is networking with people that could help you out down, in these type of dealings with. There's a process.
Absolutely. And the life skills too. Like you're having to negotiate things, you're having to sign contracts, you're having to, have big girl conversations with, different businesses and individuals. You're connecting with donors, all the things. So I think, it's definitely healthy in a sense for sure. But yeah, the connections were probably the best part for me. And if I had to give advice, it's, yeah, these brands are paying you, but at the same time, you could potentially get a job in the future from these businesses. So it's been a cool thing for college sports.
Let's talk about how you got into softball growing up. What got you interested in playing softball?
Yeah, so I have a sister, Katie. She's 4 years older than me. She started playing softball, and just growing up, I wanted to be just like her. So my dad was our coach growing up. Me and her, we'd bounce around every weekend to different ball fields as a family. And I followed the 27 when I was 27 in undergrad. That was my sister's number, and she was a catcher, I was a pitcher. We'd play in the yard all the time. Just, I mean, for as long as I can remember growing up, I always had a ball in my hand, and I was always wanting to, throw with someone on the sidelines if I'm at my sister's game, or go to the field or throw a ball in the front yard. So I think for our family, softball has just kind of been a thing for as long as I can remember.
What kind of player was she? Were you two competitive?
Oh, absolutely. We were always competitive, always trying to beat each other. She was a catcher. She played at Kennesaw State University here in the Atlanta area, about an hour from our house. So when she decided and signed her letter of intent, that was just a huge inspiration to me. And really, when I decided that, I want to play college softball too, this is not just a dream, but this is a goal for me now that I'm going to, do whatever I can to pursue it. So.
As you played, obviously, travel ball in high school, you became like a big name in the recruiting circles. And I remember that. That was kind of like, for me, it was kind of an eye opener there. What was it like for you to go through that? Where, you're pitching, you're trying to figure out what's the best school for you. You got all these schools going after you, which is a good problem to have. But yet you have all these people kind of curious what you're going to do because, hey, this is one of the best pitchers and players in the country. What was that like to go through that and have maybe one of the first, one of the marquee players that, had a lot of attention before even getting into college?
Yeah, I think I can remember around that time, kind of that being the first time we had, rankings coming out
Yeah.
and all those types of things. And I think I was probably around 17 at the time and just experiencing a lot of attention, like you said. But in my eyes, I just want to go out there and play ball. That's what I love the game. I could have cared less about interviews and all of the other things that came along with it. I was happy to do it. But yeah, in a sense, I feel like I almost wasn't able to be like fully present because I just had no idea what was going on. It was all so crazy to me. And I could not be more blessed saying that too. And I'm so grateful. But at the same time, it was just a lot for a 17-year-old kid to kind of handle. So, in a sense, I feel like I had a little bit of I couldn't really be there to experience and take it all in. It just the whole thing felt surreal. It felt like a dream and I was just living in a dream. But it was super cool and I think now that I'm older and out of college and even in my last years of college, you kind of look at more of, how can we grow the game for the next generation? How can we keep making this sport, bigger and better? And like we're talking about earlier, how can we help people have careers playing the sport that they love, like so many other sports players get the opportunity to do. So, yeah, it was definitely a wild time.
You went through with a lot of football players have gone through, basketball players have gone through. So this was kind of unique in softball. Now it's become more common, I guess. I always worry. Is it too much? Is it too much? Is those type of rankings and things, attention like that, too much for a 17-year-old young lady who's trying to figure out how to play softball and which go to school? Is that too much? Is that more harm than good? I always had kind of mixed feelings about it. Having gone through it, do you feel it was a negative? Do you think it was a positive? Do you think it didn't really matter because you blocked it all out?
Yeah, I think in a sense for me, it didn't necessarily matter. When you get to college, regardless of what sport you're playing, these are things that come with it. You do your media, you have your brand, you have a personal brand. And I think in a way it definitely prepared me for when I got to school. A lot of things weren't as overwhelming as I might have thought they were going to be because I was kind of used to doing those things. And again, it's growing the sport, right? Like I'm so thankful for you guys and all that you do for our sport. And, if I can play a small part in that, of course, I want to do it. So I think, yes, can it be overwhelming? Of course. But at the same time, we're learning life skills of life is a crazy thing and we have to do things to prepare for them. And, what better way than to get thrown in and just kind of figure it out. So,
You said SI cover you were on?
yes.
What year?
It was my senior year of high school, so 2019.
So take us through that process of, hey, you want to be on the SI cover there, and how would hell come about, and what was it like?
Yeah, so it was actually a surprise for me. I was playing with the junior USA team at the time, and ESPN had came and said they just wanted to do a small photo shoot. So I took some pictures after a game. I was super sweaty. I had no makeup on, and I really had no idea what the pictures were going to be used for. But I was like, yeah, of course, whatever you guys need. So took some pictures, and then a few weeks later, I went out to LA for the ESPYS with Gatorade after winning the National Player of the Year and they had a little ceremony and Peyton Manning was up on the microphone and he kind of announced the national players were me and Bobby Witt Jr. and unveiled the Sports Illustrated cover. So it was all a big surprise. I had no idea it was going to happen. I actually didn't even prepare a speech because I thought, no way I'm going to win the overall player. Like there's just no way it's going to be me. So it was definitely a huge shock. But super cool experience. I mean, not many softball players get to say they were able to do that. So I think it was really cool. It was cool for the game. I was the first softball player to win the overall national player. I believe Ava from Florida won it after me, which is super cool. So I mean that in itself just kind of shows the growth that softball's made. But yeah, it was a big surprise. Once again, super grateful for the opportunity. But
Yeah, National Player of the Year, right there with Bobby Witt Jr., who's now arguably one of the best Major League Baseball players in the country. Peyton Manning around. That's not bad company. You were around there.
no, not at all. Not at all.
Do you remember when you won that National Player of the Year? What was your reaction when you got that? You got that word.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually working a baseball camp at my high school, and I turn around and there's Jenny Finch walking out with the trophy. Who I mean, I have cardboard cutouts still in my basement where I pitch of Jenny Finch. I just completely idolized her all growing up as a softball player and as a woman. And it was such a surreal experience. I mean, I really can't put into words how special it was. But yeah, I still remember it like it was yesterday for sure. Definitely a highlight moment for me.
You got the trophy from that? Do you still have it somewhere?
I do. I have it in here
All
somewhere.
right, all right, that's fine. As long as you got it, that's all that matters. That's pretty sweet. I mean, not many could say that. You mentioned Aver, for Florida has done it since. Uh, you mentioned you were on the junior national team, I believe, in 2019. That was when the U.S. won on a walk-off
Mhm.
in Irvine against Japan. It was a dramatic gold medal game on the under 18 team. What do you remember from that experience and representing the red, white, and blue and wearing that colors?
Yeah, I mean, that summer was so awesome just to kind of look at the people I got the opportunity to play with before we hit college. But people like Montana Fouts, Megan Freemo, Skylar Wallace, you had Jada Coleman on that team, and Charlotte Eccles. The list goes on. Just so many incredible people and athletes. Getting to be coached by Tim Walton, Tony, Coach Tar, Cindy Ball, all those guys. Just, I mean, it was an incredible experience. And then obviously just the gratitude to be able to put on, the red, white, and blue and represent our country on the international stage. And that game is still one of my favorite games to this day. Obviously, everybody knows the big, USA Japan rivalry. So the walk off was just absolutely insane. We hit the dog pile on the field and all the things. So it was such an incredible game for sure.
Yes, one of the great games ever between, like you mentioned, U.S. Japan and Irvine. Do you remember where you were? Were you in the dugout when that happened, when the walk off happened, and you mentioned you get the dog pile and everything? Where were you when you saw that hit?
Yeah, I remember we were down and we pinch hit Frankie Muni, who played at Oregon State. She hits a 3-1 home run. We are just going absolutely crazy. And then I believe Charlotte Eccles hits a ball that just barely doesn't clear the fence and then is on second base. I'm in the dugout. Jazz Severs gets up there and it's a ground ball to shortstop that ends up winning the game. And so we just run out and just go absolutely wild. So yeah, I can probably close my eyes and remember it frame by frame.
Who, when you were on that team, did you work more with Coach Ball Malone, who was handling the pitchers? Did you work with the other staffs? How does that work? Because you're a two-way player, so you could. I'm fascinated. We'll get into this as you get into your college career, of who you work with and who you report to as a two-way player.
Yeah, I kind of get the opportunity to work with everybody, right? So I'm doing, hitting stuff with Tony. I'm doing infield with Coach Walton. I'm doing my pitching with Coach Ball, and then Coach Tar obviously is kind of the ultimate manager, so she kind of does a little bit of everything. But yeah, I kind of have to pick and choose what I need for the day if we're on a time restraint type of thing, or coming early or staying late to make sure I'm getting both my pitching, hitting, and my defense in. So yeah, I get to work with everybody.
That's a good deal. It's a very good deal. You end up deciding to go to Washington to play. What went into that decision to go out west and play for Washington for somebody that you grew up in the more in the South? So what led you to go to Washington?
Yeah, so I actually had one of my best friends transfer into my high school, and her name's Lily Agan, and she was committed to Washington. And so when I opened my recruiting back up my senior year, I kind of had the connection through her. So I'd see them at a few games, in travel ball out in, Colorado, PGF, those types of things. And, just started getting on the phone with Coach Tar. I talked to them a few times. And then they asked me to come out on a visit, and I'm kind of talking to my mom. I'm like, that's really far away. We're like, well, we've never even been to Seattle. So like, let's just go out there. Like, if anything, let's go check out Seattle. Let's check out the school. So I go out there on a visit, not really expecting to, really consider Washington as an option just because of how far away it was and just growing up as a kid in SEC country. But, I just absolutely fell in love with it when I went out there. Such a great group of people she's able to recruit. So Sis Bates was my host, and I just remember I just love Sis and all the people that were, on the team during that time. And yeah, I think I just unexpectedly fell in love with it.
Yeah, that was pretty good. How many schools, you don't have to mention who they were if you don't want to, but how many schools reached out to you during your recruitment? Give me an estimate
Um,
ballpark number.
A good bit, a good bit. I think when I did decide, my senior year, I decided that because I was able to use my official visits at that point. So I wanted to narrow it down to 5 from, the masses that did reach out. But yeah, I honestly don't remember. That was quite a while ago, but
Right, because I only asked that because, like, obviously this past summer, you just had Nija Kennedy and her kind of transferring, and all these schools were speculated, and I would imagine she got, her people, got, reached out by a bunch of different people. I mean, it's got to, I mean, trust me, nobody, it's a good problem to have. People like you, they want to have you, but it is a lot, right? Like, you're getting it from everywhere. So you almost have to process this and kind of almost kind of block it off and decide what you want for you that's best for you.
absolutely. And especially transferring, it's kind of a quick turnaround. That decision needs to be made sooner than later, especially when you're applying to grad school and those type of things. So I know for me, when I went into the portal, one of the things was I wanted to go closer to home. So that kind of helped me edge out a lot of schools that weren't in the radius that I was looking in. So that was a big help for me. But yeah, it's definitely overwhelming. You're checking your email all the time because I mean, for me personally, like I want to make sure I try to respond to everyone. I by no means want to, whether I'm interested or not, just completely disregard anything. So it can definitely be overwhelming, and I feel for all the young kids doing it right now. I know September 1st just happened, so it can be overwhelming, but at the same time, like what a cool experience. Like how many kids out there that play this sport get the opportunity, when that September 1st hits, to get these calls from these coaches and these emails of people wanting to come out on campus. So that's what I've been stressing to some of the girls that I've been talking to is just be super grateful for all the hard work you've done to get to this point. Yes, it's stressful and it's overwhelming, but at the same time, how cool and awesome is this experience that you're getting to have. So
What's your favorite memory game moment from your time at Washington?
From my time at Washington, I would definitely say that McNeese regional game. I mean, I still get chill bumps thinking about it. They made a super cool video that my senior class and the class that was above me, we were just texting about it a few days ago. But yeah, like what a surreal game. That's at the top for sure.
You helped contribute there in that comeback. Take me through that inning. It's an iconic. It's going to be talked about forever. I mean, your McNeese playing really well. They had just won the first game to force the if necessary. They have this big lead. I mean, how did you keep the up? What was the positivity there? How do you were able to keep that hope and make that incredible, memorable comeback?
Yeah, I think, one thing that we always said, and that was a part of our culture, was to, never count the dogs out. Like we didn't care what the score was. We didn't care how many outs we had left. Like you weren't going to count us out. We were going to fight till the last out. We were going to fight till the last pitch. And, obviously that year, I think we had 8, seniors in the lineup. And so I think just coming up to bat, knowing that, I'm going to do everything I can to, keep us in this thing. Like, we knew we were a special group. We knew that we weren't made to go out in that regional. The score might not have reflected it at the time, but we just had hope and we knew the work we put in and we knew we were going to have each other's backs. And I knew whoever was hitting in front of me was going to do everything that they possibly could to help our team out. And I think it was just a super, super, super cool moment to see just kind of all the seniors in those lineups just continue to pass the bat down and then ultimately, come back and win the thing. It was super special.
Pretty special win that. You come back and then beat Louisiana in the Supers to get to the World Series. Did you feel that momentum just carried through Louisiana from that inning, coming back against McNeese, that large deficit to come back, and then just it felt like you kind of just flew that momentum into that Super Regional and to get into the World Series?
Absolutely. I mean, softball is such a game of momentum. And after winning that game, I feel like we rode a high for a while that, obviously ended up carrying us to the World Series. And when Louisiana came into town, we just knew we were like, we're going to the World Series. Like we're not going to let them breathe. Like we're going to pounce on them and we're going to get to the World Series. And I think you could definitely see the momentum shift from how we were playing early on in that regional versus, the last game into supers and then into the World Series. It just almost felt like a different team. Like we were finally like one unit, one heartbeat. It was an awesome thing to be a part of.
I remember asking you, I think, when you were in the podium at the World Series, and I asked some of your fellow senior teammates and you talked about how important it was to get the program back to the World Series. That was a goal that you set up when you got to Washington. Was, hey, I want to get to the World Series. How big was that to, as it turns out, your last game as a Husky is at home as a victory to get to the World Series, and that you end your Washington portion of your career in Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you dream of, right? Your last game being at the World Series as a college player, which ultimately I decided to take my 5th year after that, but um man, I just have such incredible friendships and relationships from that team that I will carry on for the rest of our life. And so I think when you're getting to experience those moments, with your best friends, with people you consider sisters, it just makes it even more special. And I think everyone that's a part of the UW program is so passionate about the history and the culture that comes with it. So for us being able to be back at the World Series after they had that 2019 run. We knew we deserved it. We knew that we had the tools and we had the people to get there. But as everyone knows, just because you should win on paper, that definitely by no means means that you're going to win in the game. So I think for us, just finally finding that ground of, okay, we're one team, we're one heartbeat now. Like we move as one, we strike as one. It was really, really special.
I sense that you that group. Well, you always going to be connected in that with that group because of what you accomplished in that comeback against McNeese, getting to the World Series, and that senior group in particular, your senior class. You're all connected. Just how were you all connected that way? Because obviously afterwards, I think you all, it was a big senior class. Some of you all moved on, as we'll get into, but. Where did that connection come from? Was it from the ups and downs throughout your careers that kind of bonded you all closer?
Yeah, I think many things come into it, but ultimately, in college athletics, you're spending 24/7 with, the people that are on your team. And in my time in Seattle, I lived with four to five teammates every year. I was out there, and I can remember the first day I moved in, and my freshman roommate was Jalen Alchin, who I played on the junior team with that summer before. And so we kind of already created a little bond, and just how excited we were to be there. I met Bailey Klingler, who had transferred in that year, and just instantly connected with her. And maybe I can tip my cap to Coach Tarr's, recruiting skills, but I think she just really put together a really good group of people who, we were kind of all in on the program. And I think the bond was just created. I think we were just all meant to be there at that time. I wouldn't say there was a specific incident that brought us closer, but just a really solid group of girls.
You get to the World Series, that wraps up. How long after that did you decide, hey, I want to play, but I'm going to transfer? Take me through that decision process. Obviously, you were part of that group, but a lot of student athletes at that time that had that extra year to think about because of COVID and the pandemic and everything. So it's a unique situation. What was that process like to making that determination that I want to take advantage and take another year, but I want to move on to a new challenge somewhere else and maybe get my master's degree.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of things that went into the decision. The grad school possibilities for me at Washington was one of them. There wasn't a lot of opportunities at grad school for me personally that I wanted to pursue. Obviously, we lost a lot of the seniors that year, a lot of the girls I was really close to. During my time there, we had a lot of coaching changes as well take place. And two, I lost my grandpa that last year I was at Washington. And I think that was a really big moment in my life. And knowing that, my family, they would buy the Sling TV or whatever they had to try to catch the Pac-12 games because everyone knows their streaming was always hard to watch and get on your TV. But I think for me, I just saw how invested my family had been, and me and my success for so long. I kind of wanted to finish closer to home, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to see me play more. And I think it was just the best decision for me at the time.
So you end up transferring. You go to LSU. What was it about LSU that grabbed you, that you wanted to be a Tiger?
Yeah, I'd been talking to Coach Beth, throughout the years and some of my other recruiting journeys, but I'd actually never stepped on campus. So when I decided to transfer, I was like, all right, like I'm coming on campus. It's about time I go check this place out. And I got there, and one of the first things that I did was, Coach Beth pulls up some of my film and starts talking about, all right, well, this is what I want to change definitely, and this and this. And I just love that about her. She's such a go-getter. Like she wants to win. She wants to do whatever she can to win, and she's there to fix things. So um, Dobby and Bryce and Sandy and all those people. I love them. I played with Taylor Pleasance on the junior team, who obviously was, you know, probably one of the biggest faces in the history of LSU softball. So just kind of getting to catch up with her and ask her about, the school and the vibe and, how the team was, the culture, all of those things. And yeah, I knew it was where I wanted to go. I just felt like that's where I was meant to be. So.
A lot of athletes, when they make the move, it's 1 year, it's an adjustment period. It takes them a while to get used to. You seem to fit right away, at least from afar. Was it that easy of a transition? What was it like adjusting and being there in Baton Rouge and adjusting with your players? Was it as easy of a fit as it looked like from the outside?
Yeah, absolutely. I am so sad I only got 1 year there. I wish I could play softball or college softball for the rest of my life. It's such a special thing, but, yeah, I actually lived with 2 other girls that had transferred in, that had gone to previous universities, so we were able to bond instantly over that, and, I love those girls so much. I just felt like they welcomed me with open arms, and from day one, just kind of going back. I knew I was only going to be there for 1 year. I was like, I'm just going to be, my true authentic self, and we're going to ride this last year out. And I couldn't have asked for, a better way to end my college career. The girls were awesome. The coaches were awesome. The community in Baton Rouge, the LSU sports community as a whole was so awesome. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
You were a two-way player, great two-way player, great defensive. You had a great glove when you played defense when you weren't pitching. Was that something you always wanted to do? It just happened that way? Because I only asked that because I had Aleta Vaughter on, and she told me that through her process as she entered the transfer portal, that was something she brought up to coaches. Like, I want to be a two-way player. Wherever I go, I want to be get an opportunity to be a two-way player. Was that something that was also part of your process as you were figuring out where to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I love pitching, but I also love hitting and I love playing defense. And it's all I'd ever known. I'd never been just a pitcher, I'd never been just a hitter. And so when I got to Washington my freshman year, they were all in on it. Had the time they made sure I got my defense in, my hitting in, my pitching in. They were all for me being a two-way player. And it was the same thing at LSU. So kind of tip my hat to those coaches and kind of moving some pieces around to make sure that I can get the work in that I need to. But yeah, I think for me, it wasn't really a question of whether I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted to do it. So I'm just grateful to the coaches for providing the opportunity for that to happen.
How does being a two-way player help you and complement each side of the game? How is, like, for example, how are you different when you're in the circle pitching versus when you're in the box getting ready to hit?
Yeah, I think for me, and something that took me a few years in college to figure out was how important the mental part of the game is, and how important it is to be able to focus your mind and your energy and really be able to live pitch by pitch because as we know, softball is such a game of ups and downs. So I think for me, it created a really cool balance of when I'm pitching, I'm able to, be out there and be a pitcher. And when I come in the dugout, I'm able to put my helmet on and be a hitter. So it allowed less time for me to sit and think about what I just pitched about the inning before and those types of things. So I think for me, it created a really nice balance.
You ended up having an all SEC year. Do you feel this past year was your best year of your collegiate career? How would you compare Kelley Lynch, the LSU player, versus Kelley Lynch, the Washington player?
I think, I had surgery on my finger coming off of my sophomore season, and I think I just it took me a while to kind of figure out, the pitcher I was going to be after getting my finger reconstructed. And my last year at Washington, I worked heavily with Kyle Novak, and he introduced me to Alan Jaeger, who probably many know from the Jaeger bands everyone used to stretch before games. But became a really really solid mentor of mine, teaching me the mental game, and it took some time for those practices to come into fruition. And I feel like by the time I got to LSU, I was in a really really good state of mind, and Beth was really eager to get me back to the pitcher that I believed I could be, and she believed that I could be that too. And yeah, I just have all the blessings in the world to her. We worked really really well together. We had a really cool relationship in the bullpen, and I think I worked harder at LSU pitching probably than I had in previous years, just because I kind of got to the point where I was like, all right, this is it. Like this year, I got to lay it all out there. So I think just kind of altogether, I was in a better mental state, and I think that kind of propelled my performance as well.
Describe what's it like to have a bullpen session with Coach Torina. Because I've had many stories, so I'm sure you got a couple.
Well, for me and her, it was a lot of laughs. I joke with her. I say we're like polar opposites. She's a very go-getter. I'm definitely more laid back. I like to joke around. So when the two of us would get in there, we created a nice balance with each other. And then because I was in grad school at the time, the practice times always didn't match up. So I would sometimes have to be in class during practice. So I ended up having a lot of my bullpens kind of on a one-on-one basis. So it would just be me and her in there. And man, we would have a good time. But she knew how to push me. I told her that from day one. Like, I want you to push me as hard as I can. Like, this is it. I want to put it all out there. And I just respect her so much. She really kind of brought me back to life in a sense. I think she gave me a lot of confidence in what I could do as a pitcher and how I could help the team. And she's very technical too, which I really liked. We were always trying to critique things. We were always trying to make things better. And then truly with my finger, that was kind of the first time I was able to be, a 6 day a week bullpen thrower. Previously, unfortunately, just because of what I'd gone through surgery, there'd be months where I would only be able to pitch on the weekends. I wouldn't be able to handle it during the week. So
Sure.
pitch counts and all those kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of things that went into it, but yeah, I absolutely love throwing in the bullpen with BT. She's special for sure.
Did you develop any superstitions being around her? As we know, she is a very superstitious person. I've
No,
heard.
I didn't pick any of them up,
Okay,
thankfully.
okay, you blocked it out. Did you notice it right away though? As you got around her, did you notice her superstitions?
Oh yeah, she definitely the jacket's a big one, If something happens, she has a jacket on, she's not gonna take it off. There's a few things just random stuff here and there, but I was just always a person that was joking around with her about it. So
She told me that. That was the thing that jumped out at you. Like she was like as you were on board, she was caught off guard. Like how funny you were. Like there's like wait, like oh she's joking with her constantly there and needling her. It was, but she enjoyed that a ton there, having you around from that standpoint, in that regard. And really, it showed on the field. You went 9-3 on the season with a 2.7 ERA, and then maybe the game that you're going to be remembered for, at least in the circle, because arguably you had your best pitching performance of your career and your best hitting game of your career as a Tiger. April 13th, when you throw the no hitter against Auburn in Tiger Park, it was the first time an LSU Tiger had thrown a no hitter in SEC play in, I think, over 20 some years. Uh, what do you remember about that game? Did you know as you were pitching that you had a no hitter going?
I think I realized more towards the end of the game, but it definitely wasn't a reoccurring thought in my head by any means. That was actually our Go Teal weekend where we were honoring Alex and trying to raise, awareness for ovarian cancer. So I remember that morning, we all participated in the walk and did all the things. And as some people might know, my dad passed away of cancer and is a huge driver and how I view softball and one of the reasons why I play. And so after the no hitter, I remember Coach Beth coming up to me and just saying, how special it is that I was able to do it on this day. And she gave me the ball, and it was definitely a really really special moment. It almost felt like something more kind of supernatural was out there happening, just with all the history behind it. But yeah, definitely a special game for sure.
It's like it was meant to be, right? It was destined that you had to pitch that game, and in that game, a lot of powers that be were watching you that day. That was
Absolutely.
important. Were players talking to you as that no hitter was developing, or did they avoid you?
Yeah, I think that's a known thing, in the softball world. We don't really bring up a no hitter if it's going on, but I think definitely everybody kind of knew. I mean, you look at that last catch Sierra Briggs made, just placed perfectly out there, which we know not a lot of balls drop in the outfield and in Tiger Park when you have the LSU outfield out there. But yeah, I just think a lot of pieces were perfectly in place for that game to happen. Incredible defense. My catcher did an incredible job, and yeah, it was a crazy moment.
So you said you didn't know until late in the game. So what are we thinking? Fifth, sixth inning, you started to figure out, oh, I got a no hitter. Do you block that out right away? I mean, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I'd say towards the end of the fifth inning, but for me, I'm just trying to win the ball game. So as long as I can, have them score less runs than we do, I'm happy at the end of the day. So, it's a cherry on top that it ended up being a no hitter, but I just want to get the win for our team. So
What went through your mind when you mentioned that Briggs catch? Game's over. You got the no hitter.
yeah, I just remember the ball coming off the bat, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I turned around, and of course, Cece's right there, ready to catch it, and just having my teammates come up and share how happy they were for me, and that was a big win for us too, right? We're kind of struggling once we hit SEC play, so I think it was just talking about momentum again. It was good momentum shift, for me pitching, for our team getting the win. Yeah, it was cool.
Your mom was there for that game?
Yes, she was.
All right, I had to give her a shout out. I know she listens, so I needed to give her Jan a shout out there. But that had, I mean, that's so special, right? Like because if you do that maybe on the road, that may not happen necessarily. But it was all like so perfectly timed. Like I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, if you script that in Hollywood, I don't know if they would necessarily buy it. But that's like a movie right there. That day.
Yeah, it was super special, and like I said, I definitely had some people looking out for me, from the clouds for sure. So it was a special day.
You go on and win a regional at home, and then you play Stanford in the super regionals, and then in game one of that super regional, you guys beat Nija Kennedy. You get a career high 5 RBIs in that game. What was it like for you in that game, going to Stanford super regionals, and you're crushing the ball against the national, what would turn out to be the national player of the year?
Yeah, I think going in, we had all the hope in the world, and we knew we were a team that could go to the World Series. And I think when you get placed, against Nigel Kennedy, who's arguably going to be one of the best pitchers to ever touch a softball, uh, we definitely started planning. So we're planning for her the whole week, and we get there game one, and of course we expected to win, but I don't think we expected a run will win. So just jumping out on top and getting that win was huge for the program, huge for our team that weekend. And then, Nigeri does Nigeri things. We knew she was going to come back the next day stronger and better and wanting some redemption, which she definitely did. But yeah, I think, luckily I spent 4 years playing Stanford when I was in the pack. I'd faced Nigeri a few times. I pitched their lineup a few times. So I'm just trying to share all the wisdom I could with our squad and how I felt, how I was going to approach her. Obviously, our coaches were putting a plan together for us at the plate, but yeah, I think we came out just fired up that first game. We were just fired up. We were ready to go.
What do you remember about that at bat where you hit the grand slam offer?
I remember not knowing if it was going to go over or not, which it honestly did kind of barely clear the fence. But I mean, a home run's a home run at the end of the day. But oh man, I was so excited. I want to say that was the only home run I hit this past year. I really hadn't been kind of, power clearing the fences so far. So, yeah, I was super, super excited. I mean, once you get to that point in the season, you're just grateful to be there and you're doing everything you can to try to extend your season for the team. But yeah, it was an awesome moment for sure.
You had good numbers against Niger. In fact, I remember watching it. The broadcast highlighted that throughout that series to the point where there was times where you could see that Niger was extra careful with you at the plate. Did you pick up on that? That she was. You kind of had a bit of, I don't know if an advantage. That's an unfair word to say for her, but you've had success against her. Not many could say that, and as a result, she had a lot of respect for you. Basically, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think, being a pitcher too, you kind of just have games where you can feel if someone's kind of on you a little bit. And so um kind of that second game, I got walked a couple times, but after that, she was coming right at me, and she had my number the rest of the weekend. She's incredible. I remember going up to her after the game and just saying like, "Wow, like you were just such an incredible person." Like tip my hat off to you. But she's just a competitor. I don't think she wanted to walk me, intentionally. Like you can just tell she's a competitor to her core, and she's out there and she's trying to throw that thing right through you. So. Um, I think for me, I just happen to like rice balls. I always my swing matches up well against it, and yeah, just trying to be in the moment and do whatever I can. And I happen to get some hits off of her, but at the same time, she struck me out many times as well. So it's a good competition we had going. It makes the game fun. Those are always my favorite at bats when you can tell both sides are competing as hard as they can. It's the
Game,
best part. That's what makes it fun. So
right, and it was game respects game. She respected you to the so she knew not to get you couldn't. She had to be on her best to get you out, which was great competition with the two of you there. I know it didn't end like you would have liked. One game short of getting back to the World Series, but now that you've had time to reflect on it, do you feel in a way it was kind of unique? In a way, it was kind of unique in that your career ends on the West Coast in a Pac-12 place, basically. Uh, Playing both, where your career started in the Pac-12 and then you're playing in the SEC, the two best conferences in the sport, and they all kind of collide here in your final weekend of your collegiate career.
yeah, I mean, life has a funny way of working out. It does. Yeah, I think it was cool. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to go to the World Series, and I'm grateful that I was able to do that at Washington because I mean, anyone that's been there can tell you just what a surreal and special thing it is to be a part of. But yeah, I look back, I have no regrets on my college career. I just feel so blessed for all the opportunities I had, at both schools, the coaches, the people I was able to meet. I really wouldn't change a thing. And yeah, I think it's cool. I ended it. I'm glad I got to play Stanford again before the Pac-12, kind of dissembled here. This year everyone's moved on, but yeah, such a special conference with a lot of softball history. So it was definitely blessed to be there. I think it's still crazy that the Pac-12 is no longer. I remember watching the tournament and kind of texting, with some of my friends on Washington and being like, man, I can't believe, we're 2 years into finally getting a softball Pac-12 tournament and now it's already going to be over. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
that's right, because you got to take part in the first ever Pac-12 tournament in Arizona,
Mhm.
which turns out to be. I mean, you're in a weird way, you're part of history. You're part of that last groups that got to play in the Pac-12. Which how bizarre is that? That now, I mean, you're technically a Big Ten alum, which is bizarre to say. Like you get to say you played in a conference that doesn't exist really, basically right now. Like, I mean, is that bizarre to kind of get a handle on a conference that is so rich with softball history?
Yeah, it's definitely crazy and it's sad a little bit, I remember coming from Georgia, going out to Washington and playing in the Pac-12. You obviously know a little bit about the history, but then being able to play, in that conference and really you can just tell, how rich in history the Pac-12 is in regards to softball. And it's kind of, the forefather, if you want to say it, but they're kind of the OGs. So it's kind of sad to see the Pac-12 go. But I know big things are still ahead, and all the conference realignment is super crazy and way over my head. But I guess that's where we're at. So you just kind of have to, adjust and put one foot in front of the other and keep going. But yeah, I'm super blessed that I was able to be, in that Pac-12 group because it was super rich in history and truly something special to be a part of.
You got to play in the Pac-12 and in the SEC. Describe those experiences and the differences in being in those two conferences.
Yeah, I think the Pac-12 was super cool in Washington specifically because you're kind of isolated up there. So we got to do a ton of travel. I got to go to Mexico with them. We got to go to Hawaii. We were always traveling for preseason, and then obviously, we're sitting up in Seattle. So we've got the Mariners, we've got the Seahawks, we've got
That's
uh,
right.
all these professional teams, and there was such still a solid and loyal UW fan base. But you're right there in the city, so in a sense, I would say it didn't give college town vibes. But I had such a blast. Just the sport enthusiasm that's up there is insane. And then getting to LSU and I kind of experienced what a college town really is like. Everyone there, everyone that you run into is an LSU fan. They don't miss games. They are ride or die. They bleed purple and gold. So I had a great experience at both, but I definitely say they were opposite in that aspect of kind of going from big city to, smaller college town. So,
Did you get to cover? Did you get to go to a football game at Tiger Stadium?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Pretty cool, right? Did you go a night game? Night game?
Yeah, we did have a night game. It gets so loud in there. It's so much fun.
Plus, Seattle's pretty loud too. You think about it. If you kind of pinched yourself and like, wow, I got to play for two legendary head coaches. I got to play at two great institutions in two great places to play softball. And to other sporting events for that matter. I mean, that Washington football stadium I've heard great things about as well. I mean, have you thought about that? Like, not many could say that what you've been able to experience throughout your collegiate career.
Yeah, like I said, I just feel so, so, so blessed. And, um, I just can't thank both Coach Tar and, Beth Tarina enough for taking a chance on me and allowing me to be a part of their programs, and, kind of make my mark and contribute what I could. Yeah, I mean, Seattle's just beautiful. You have that lake right there. I'll still look at pictures of when the sun would come out.
Sure.
We wouldn't go inside. We'd stay outside as long as we can. It's just so beautiful. And then obviously Tiger Park and the Mike and it being one of the nicest softball facilities in the country. Just the money that LSU put into the softball program is so awesome and cool for women's sports and women's athletics. And yeah, I'm so grateful. I mean, I really don't know what other to say other than, I'm grateful for it.
Two last questions for you. What message do you have for your LSU players that are returning? Being so close, I'm sure they're going to be motivated to get that one step closer. What motivation do you, what inspiration do you give them moving forward here with their careers?
Man, yeah, I know how eager that group is. We had a lot of seniors on the team last year, and we had a big roster, so a lot of those girls have been waiting for their shot, and I know how eager they are. They have a really good squad this year. I would just tell them to live in the moment, don't make it any bigger than it already is. Now that I finished my softball career, I think about all the times of whether it was being stressed out or thinking that softball was more bigger than it is. But at the end of the day, it's a game, and we're playing it to have fun, and we're competing because we're having fun and we're stepping the field with girls we're going to be sisters for the rest of our lives. So the memories that you're going to make playing, whether it's at the college level or not, just remember it's a game, and just remember to have fun, be out there, remember why you played the game, why you started playing. When we were all kids, we were just out there because we loved it. So I would just say don't lose that part of it, and yeah, just go compete, have some fun.
Last thing, I know you're still figuring out your future and all that, so I'm not going to ask you about that. I just want to ask you, what do you want people to remember you by when they bring up Kelley Lynch, maybe at a alumni event at LSU or Washington, wherever you're at, and they bring up the name Kelley Lynch? What do you want people to say about you?
Yeah, I just hope people remember, to not take life too seriously. I feel like I brought a lot of laughs when I was around, and I try to keep things lighthearted. So, um, you know, at least for me, I know I'll remember the memories a lot more than whatever my stats were, however many games I won. The reason college softball was special to me was because the people that I experienced it with, the coaching staffs I had, the communities. So I just hope people remember me as, someone who came up with a good attitude and made jokes and, kept it light and, was a shoulder to lean on. So
Well, that's a really good way to. I think that's you're going to be a high percentage. That's what they're going to mention about you. Hey, congrats on everything you've accomplished this time throughout your career to this point. Selfishly, I will admit I'm selfish here. I hope you keep playing, but whatever you end up doing moving forward, I hope it's the best for you there. Thank you so much for taking the time and telling your story and getting a chance to talk to us. We've been a fan from afar, and I appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule here, and always appreciate you coming on. And you're always welcome to come on here on In the Circle on D1 Softball.
yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for all you do for our sport and your investment. So it definitely makes an impact and I appreciate it a lot. I know everyone else does too. So